I laid my husband to rest half a year ago. Last night I found him alive. I'd stayed beside his headstone until my legs turned to stone, until the cold marble under my palm felt warmer than my own flesh. Half a year of waking to empty mornings. Half a year of reaching across the bed where Thomas should have been. Half a year of relearning how to exist without him. At least that's what I believed. That day I headed to the market because sorrow doesn't excuse bare cupboards. I can still picture myself in the canned food section, staring blankly at endless rows of beans and soup, thinking how bizarre it was that the world kept spinning normally while mine had ground to a halt. I grabbed for a jar of pasta sauce, and that's when I caught it, his voice. Not shouting, not saying my name, just that familiar noise born from routine. A quiet cough, then a grumbled remark about cost. The precise tone I'd listened to for 41 years. The sound that used to float from the kitchen while he skimmed the newspaper. The sound I'd sworn I'd never experience again. My hand stopped midair. I pivoted slowly, my pulse already racing, like my body grasped the reality before my brain could process it. And there he stood, 3 shelves over, gripping a shopping basket, studying labels the way he always had. Thomas. Those same wide shoulders bent slightly now with time, that same steel-coloured hair that never stayed smooth, that same mark over his right eyebrow from the ladder accident he joked about for years. The man I'd buried, the man whose name sat engraved in stone. I let go of the jar. It exploded on the floor. Crimson spraying across white tile like something living. People gasped. Someone asked, "Ma'am, are you all right?" I didn't respond. My legs were already carrying me forward. "Thomas!" I shouted, my voice splintering as it escaped my throat. "Thomas, it's me!" He turned. For one awful, hopeful instant, I anticipated recognition. I anticipated disbelief. I anticipated his expression lighting up the way it always did when he spotted me after work. Instead, he looked puzzled, truly puzzled. "I'm sorry," he said slowly, cautiously, like addressing someone delicate. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The statement struck harder than the sight of him. Mistaken, as though 41 years could be mistaken, as though I hadn't committed every crease of his face to memory in darkness. "No," I breathed, moving closer. "No, Thomas, it's me, Eleanor, your wife." He retreated 1 step. That movement wounded more than anything. Thomas never backed away from me, not once, not even during our ugliest fights. "My name is Daniel," he said. "Daniel Brooks. I don't know you." His voice was identical, deep, faintly rough, the voice that whispered he loved me on quiet evenings when words seemed inadequate. I fumbled for my phone with trembling fingers and pulled up a picture from last summer, his final birthday, the 2 of us on the porch, his arm draped over my shoulders. I thrust it between us. "Look," I said, "look at this. Do you remember this day? You charred the steaks and blamed the grill." He glanced at the screen. Just for an instant, something shifted in his expression. A hesitation too lengthy. A clenching of his jaw. Then he shook his head. "I'm sorry," he repeated. "I've never seen that photograph before. You must be experiencing something very difficult." He rested a hand on my shoulder. That touch nearly shattered me. It was his hand, the same warmth, the same pressure, the same spot he always touched when trying to soothe me. "Please," he went on gently, "you should sit down, get some water." I stared at his left hand. "Show me your fingers," I demanded suddenly. He frowned but raised his hand. There it sat, the bent pinky, the one he fractured at 15 fixing his mother's roof, the one I used to tease him about when our hands intertwined. My stomach plummeted. "I have to leave now," he said quickly, already turning his cart. "I truly hope you feel better." And just like that, he disappeared. I stood there trembling while a worker mopped the spill at my feet. People looked away. Someone muttered, "Poor woman." They were mistaken. I wasn't poor. I was horrified, because as I watched him vanish toward the registers, one thought roared louder than my grief ever had. If my husband was alive, then who was resting in his grave? And whatever the explanation was, I sensed my existence was about to rupture in ways I couldn't yet fathom. I should have exited the store. I should have driven home, bolted the door, and convinced myself grief had finally fractured something inside. That would have been simpler, neater. But I didn't leave. I observed him from the aisle's end as he checked out. He paid with bills. I registered that because Thomas always swiped a card and griped about keeping receipts. This man didn't request one. He folded the cash methodically, the same way my husband used to, smoothing the edges with his thumb. My chest constricted, every breath insufficient. When he wheeled the cart toward the doors, my feet moved automatically. I trailed at a distance, hiding behind displays, pretending to scan labels. I felt absurd and frantic and utterly conscious all at once. Outside, the afternoon breeze slapped my skin. He loaded his bags into an aged sedan, white paint, faded by weather, a dent along the back door. Not the vehicle Thomas owned, not the vehicle he cherished and buffed every weekend. Still, the manner he arranged the bags inside was unmistakable. Heavy items first, bread on top, eggs last. I committed the license plate to memory, without realizing what I was doing. He pulled from the lot and drove off. I stood there briefly, fists tight at my sides, then walked to my vehicle, the one Thomas purchased me 2 years before the accident, saying he wanted me to have something safe, something dependable. I followed him. I maintained 3 or 4 car lengths behind, near enough not to lose track, distant enough to avoid detection. My heartbeat thundered so loudly I feared it would betray me. We crossed streets I recognized, then veered into neighborhoods I seldom explored. The homes shrank, aged, grew more humble. He decelerated and turned onto a peaceful street, bordered by trees and low fences. He parked before a modest house painted pale green, the shade meant to seem pleasant. A white picket fence bordered a compact yard. Wind chimes dangled near the porch. He climbed out with the grocery bags. Then the entrance swung open. A woman emerged, mid-50s, perhaps younger than me by 10 years. Dark hair tied back, no cosmetics, dressed in a sweater that looked worn in. She beamed when she noticed him. Not a courteous smile, a familiar one. She leaned forward and kissed his cheek. My sight blurred. She lifted one of the bags from his grip, speaking to him quietly. I couldn't catch the words, but I detected the closeness, the comfort, the rhythm of shared patterns. Then 2 kids exploded through the doorway, a boy and girl around 8 and 10. They sprinted straight to him, arms flung wide. "Grandpa," the girl yelled, "did you bring the ice cream?" He laughed. That laugh, the noise slammed me like a physical force, crooked and warm. The laugh I'd heard in our kitchen for decades, the laugh I thought had died forever. He crouched, allowing them to scramble onto him, juggling grocery bags with practiced ease. The woman watched, grinning, her palm resting lightly on his spine. They all went inside together, the door shut. I sat paralyzed in my car, stationed halfway down the block, my hands clamping the steering wheel. The sun poured through the windshield, heating my face. Only then did I notice I was weeping. Not wailing, not choking, just constant tears streaming down my cheeks. 41 years of marriage, 6 months of grieving, nights spent isolated, murmuring his name into the void. And he was here alive, laughing, embracing children who weren't mine. I grabbed my phone and started snapping pictures. The house, the car, the address, digits beside the door. My hands quivered so violently that some shots turned out fuzzy, but several were sharp enough. As the lights started dimming, I ignited my car and drove off. I don't recall the drive home, only parking in my garage afterward, staring at my phone, magnifying his face repeatedly. Every feature matched, every outline. When I finally entered my vacant house, a single question rang louder than anything else. If Thomas was alive, then who had I buried? I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a solitary lamp burning, the remainder of the house consumed by shadows. My phone rested beside old photograph albums spread open like proof at a trial. I shifted between them slowly, intentionally, as though haste might snap whatever delicate thread was sustaining me. I zoomed in on the photos I'd captured that afternoon, his face as he rotated toward the house, his silhouette through the car window. Then I examined pictures from our history, our wedding day, his first silver strand, a beach snapshot from years back where his shirt lifted slightly. Every mark matched the scar over his eyebrow from the ladder accident, the tiny mole near his collarbone he disliked because it made him uncomfortable. Even the slight asymmetry in his ears that only I ever spotted. These weren't things grief fabricated. These were truths carved by time. I pressed my fingertips to my mouth to halt the trembling. Twins didn't share scars. Strangers didn't share histories written into skin. I rose and circled the house, my footfalls echoing in rooms that abruptly felt alien. This place was meant to be my sanctuary, the home Thomas left behind. Now it resembled a stage built on falsehood. At 3:40 in the morning, I quit pacing and grabbed my phone. I dialed my son. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, Lucas picked up, his voice thick with drowsiness. "Mum, do you know what time it is? I need you to come over immediately," I said. A pause. "Mom, it's the middle of the night. Did something happen?" "Yes," I said. "Something happened." Another pause. Longer this time. "Mom, if this is about Dad again, we talked about this. You've been through a lot. Grief can do strange things." "I saw him yesterday," I said. I saw your father alive. Silence. Then a breath. Sharp, measured. Mum, what did you take? Did you miss your medication? I followed him home, Lucas. I saw where he lives. I saw his family. My voice didn't waver. That appeared to frighten him more. Stay there, he said eventually. Don't go anywhere. I'm coming. The call disconnected. I went to the bathroom and examined myself in the mirror. I hardly knew the woman staring back dark shadows beneath my eyes, hair pulled back carelessly, a face that appeared older than it had 6 months prior. When Lucas arrived 40 minutes later, he didn't knock. He let himself in just like when he was a teenager. He discovered me back at the kitchen table, encircled by photographs. "Mum," he said softly, "what's going on?" I handed him my phone first. I didn't speak. I studied his expression as he scrolled. Initially, there was bewilderment, then disbelief, then something else, terror. He swallowed hard and returned the phone. "He looks like Dad," he said carefully. "But people resemble each other. It happens." "Did you see his hand?" I asked. "The finger?" Lucas rubbed his face. "Mom, we buried Dad. You were there, I was there, everyone was there. A closed casket," I said quietly. He looked away. "They said it was better that way," he replied. "The accident was bad." "Did you see his body, Lucas?" His jaw tightened. "No, neither did I." The room felt abruptly very confined. "I want to go back there," I said, standing. "I want you to come with me." "Mom, this isn't healthy. Are you coming, or am I going alone?" He hesitated long enough for the truth to begin fracturing through the surface. "Fine," he said finally. "We'll go so you can see that it's not him, so you can let this go." We departed in silence. As we turned onto the quiet street with the pale green house, my heart started hammering again. "That's the one," I said. Lucas parked a short distance away. We sat there observing. After several minutes, the front door opened. The man stepped outside. Lucas leaned forward. The color vanished from his face. He stared, motionless, as the man walked to the car and drove past us. When I glanced at my son, tears were pouring down his cheeks. "Mum," he whispered. In that moment, before he uttered another word, I knew whatever truth he'd been harboring, it was finally destroying him too. Lucas didn't start the car. He sat there, clutching the steering wheel, his forehead pressed against it, his shoulders convulsing. I'd seen my son cry before when his first marriage collapsed, when his dog passed, but never like this. This wasn't grief. This was breakdown. "Mom," he said finally, his voice cracking, "I'm so sorry." Those words landed with chilling precision. Sorry meant guilt. Sorry meant awareness. Sorry meant this was never just in my imagination. "Tell me," I said. My voice sounded remote, even to myself. "Tell me right now." He lifted his head and met my eyes. His eyes were crimson, raw, filled with something I'd never witnessed in them before. Shame. Dad didn't die in that accident. The words suspended between us, weighty and conclusive. I didn't scream. I didn't gasp. Some part of me had already crossed into territory where shock could no longer penetrate. I simply nodded once. "Go on," He drew a deep breath as though preparing to submerge. He had another family. Mum, for a long time, over 20 years. That woman you saw, Claudia, he lived with her part of the time. He said it started as a mistake, then it just never stopped. I stared straight ahead at the deserted street. How long did you know? About 3 years, Lucas admitted. I found out by accident. I was helping him with paperwork from the marina supply business. I saw duplicate bills, utilities, insurance, 2 households. The marina supply business, the job that kept him travelling constantly, the job I'd defended to friends when they said he was absent too much. And you said nothing. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He begged me not to tell you. He said it would destroy you. He said if you found out, you'd take half of everything the business, the house, everything he built. Everything we built, I corrected. Lucas nodded miserably. 6 months ago, he came to me with a plan. He said he wanted to end the double life and be with her for good. But if he divorced you, he'd lose too much. So he decided it would be easier if you thought he was dead. My hands started shaking. Easier for whom? For him, Lucas whispered. And for me. I turned to him sharply. For you? He looked away. If he died, everything passed to me automatically. The business assets, the accounts. He transferred most of the money to himself first, under a different name. The rest came to me. I thought I could take care of you, give you an allowance, make sure you were okay. An allowance, like a child, like a stranger. How did he fake it? I asked. My voice was eerily composed. Lucas swallowed. There was a man, a homeless man, terminally ill. No family except a niece he never saw. Dad paid him, paid the niece. They staged an accident. Dad used his documents. The man died in the hospital under your husband's name. The body was badly damaged. The casket stayed closed. The world tilted. I remembered the phone call from the police. Lucas insisting I not view the body. The funeral I sobbed through while people clasped my hands and told me how strong I was. You let me bury a stranger, I said. Yes, you let me mourn him. Yes, you watched me fall apart for 6 months. Lucas broke down completely. I didn't know how to stop it once it started. I thought if enough time passed, you'd heal, that it would be kinder this way. Kinder? I laughed then, a brief sound with zero humour in it. You stole my right to the truth. You stole my grief and replaced it with a lie. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly, deliberately. Take me home, I said. Mom, we need to talk about this. Take me home. He started the car. Neither of us spoke during the drive back. When we arrived, I climbed out without glancing at him. Mom, please, he called after me. I didn't answer. Inside my house, I perched on the edge of the bed and surveyed the life I thought I'd lived. 41 years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of believing in the man beside me. It had all been theatre, and now that I knew the truth, one thing was transparent. I was done being the woman who wept in silence. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be forgiveness, it would be reckoning. For 3 days, I did nothing. I didn't call Lucas back. I didn't respond to his messages. I watched him pull into my driveway twice from the upstairs window and depart again when I didn't open the door. I let the phone ring until it quit, then ring again. 41 years of loyalty had conditioned me to always respond, to always mend things. This time, I chose silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of strategy. I slept little, but I was no longer pacing or weeping. Something inside me had transformed. Grief had consumed itself, leaving behind a cold, unwavering clarity. I replayed everything Lucas had revealed, not as a wife or a mother, but as a witness, fake death, stolen identity, hidden assets, forged signatures, a purchased body. This wasn't betrayal. This was crime. On the fourth morning, I woke before sunrise and knew precisely what I was going to do. I took a long shower, letting the hot water anchor me. I dressed deliberately, selecting clothes that made me feel like myself again, not the widow everyone pitied. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone older, yes, but sharper, awake. I was done crying. Now I was thinking. I drove downtown to a building I'd passed 100 times and never registered. 3rd floor, frosted glass door, a simple sign with black letters, private investigations. The man behind the desk was in his 60s, thinning hair, keen eyes. He glanced up when I entered and examined me without speaking. "I need to find someone," I said, sitting down without waiting to be invited. He reclined. "Is he missing or hiding?" "Hiding," I replied, "and legally dead." That captured his attention. I told him everything. Not the emotions, not the years of marriage, but the facts, the accident, the closed casket, the new name, the house, the children calling him Grandpa. I showed him the photos I'd taken. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "If what you're saying is true, this goes beyond cheating. This is identity fraud and financial deception. It'll take time. It'll cost money." "I can pay," I said. "I want proof. Bank records, property records, fake documents, everything." He named a number. I didn't flinch. I wrote the check. "I want the truth documented," I said. "Not suspected, proven." He smiled faintly. "I can do that." Over the next week, I observed from the periphery of my own life. I returned to the street with the pale green house at different hours, wearing hats and sunglasses, sitting in my car like a stranger. I learned his schedule. He departed every morning at the same time. He returned in the evening. Weekends were for the children, Sundays for church. A good man, the neighbors would have said. I learned the name he used, the work he did now, the modest life he pretended was new. I watched the woman touch his arm the way I used to. I watched him smile, with the ease of someone who believed his past was buried. It wasn't. The investigator called me 7 days later. "I have enough for a full report," he said. "You should come in." The folder he handed me was thick, heavy, real, fake birth certificate issued years after my husband was supposedly born. Bank accounts opened under the false name with nearly $2 million transferred before the accident. Utility bills and tax records connecting him to 2 households for over 2 decades. And then the last page, phone records. Multiple calls, regular contact between my husband and my son before the accident, after the funeral. During the months, I thought I was alone. Lucas hadn't just known. He'd stayed involved. I closed the folder slowly. "Thank you," I said. As I walked out of that office, something settled inside me. This was no longer about rage or revenge. It was about dignity, about truth, about refusing to be erased quietly. They thought I'd mourn forever. They thought my silence meant weakness. They were wrong. The storm hadn't passed. It had only just begun. I didn't confront Lucas right away. That was the hardest part. Every instinct in me wanted to scream, to hurl the evidence on the table and demand answers. But anger rushes, strategy waits. And for the first time in my life, I chose patience over emotion. I took the folder home and read every page slowly. Bank transfers, dates, amounts, accounts, opened under a name that didn't exist. Documents signed while my husband was supposedly dead. Everything was neat, organized, planned. This had never been a panic decision. It had been calculated. I made an appointment with an attorney the next morning, not the kind who handled wills or real estate. I needed someone who understood fraud, financial crimes, identity theft. She was direct, sharp, no wasted words. "What you're describing is a criminal conspiracy," she said after reviewing the documents. "Your husband committed identity fraud and financial theft. Your son aided and benefited. You're entitled to restitution, and there's strong ground for criminal charges." I felt a strange calm listening to her. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "A confession would help," she replied, "especially from your son. We also need proof of asset transfers and forged authorizations. If we have that, the case is airtight." I already knew where those documents would be. Lucas kept an office at the main supply warehouse. He'd once given me a spare key years ago for emergencies. I'd never used it until now. But first, I needed him to talk. I called him that afternoon. "Mom," he answered immediately. "Are you okay? I've been so worried." "I'm tired," I said, letting my voice soften. "I don't want to fight anymore. I just need to understand everything so I can move forward." There was relief in his breath. "Of course, Mum. Anything you want to know. Let's have lunch tomorrow," I said, "somewhere quiet." He agreed without hesitation. That night, I placed a small recorder in my purse. I practiced keeping my hands still. I rehearsed my questions until they sounded like curiosity instead of accusation. At lunch, I listened. I let him talk. I asked when the plan started, how the money was moved, who signed what, where the proceeds from the sales had gone. Each answer came easily to him, now unguarded, confident that I was still his mother, still safe. He didn't notice the recorder. He didn't notice that every word was sealing his fate. While we ate, my attorney and the investigator were already at work. With the evidence I'd provided, they secured emergency access to financial records. The transactions told the rest of the story: forged signatures, unauthorized sales, funds wired into accounts Lucas controlled. By the time lunch ended, the trap was closed. That afternoon, my attorney filed the complaint. With the district attorney, fraud, forgery, financial exploitation, identity theft. 2 hours later, she called me. "The case has been accepted. Warrants are being prepared." I sat alone in my living room when the call ended. The house was quiet. No music, no television, just the ticking clock on the wall. I thought of the woman I'd been 6 months ago, crying into an empty pillow, begging a dead man to come back. That woman wouldn't have survived this moment. But I was no longer her. I didn't feel joy or triumph. I felt resolved. The truth was no longer mine alone. Soon it would belong to the law. The first call came at dawn. It wasn't Lucas. It was my attorney. "They've issued the warrants," she said. "Your son was taken into custody early this morning. No resistance." I closed my eyes and let the words settle. Somewhere across the city, Lucas was being handcuffed, read his rights, led into a car in front of neighbours who once admired him. The weight of that didn't feel like victory. It felt like inevitability. An hour later, my phone started ringing. Lucas, over and over. I didn't answer. Then a message from his wife, short, shaking. "What did you do?" I set the phone face down and made coffee. By noon, the news had spread through the family. Cousins, old friends, people who'd stood beside me at the funeral, who'd hugged me and said I was strong. Now they were calling to ask questions they didn't want answered. I ignored them all. At 2 in the afternoon, my attorney called again. "There's something else," she said. "The identity he's using, Daniel Brooks, it's being formally invalidated. The accounts under that name have been frozen. He has nowhere to hide." That was the moment I knew I needed to see him. Not to argue, not to explain, but to end it. I drove back to the quiet street with the pale green house. I parked directly in front this time. I didn't hide. I didn't observe from a distance. I walked to the door and rang the bell. It was the woman who opened it, Claudia. She looked at me with cautious politeness, the kind reserved for strangers. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Daniel," I said. "It's urgent." She hesitated, then nodded. "He's in the backyard." She stepped aside. He was standing near the fence, tools in his hands, sleeves rolled up. For a second, he didn't see me. Then he turned. The recognition was immediate. "Eleanor," he whispered. I held out the envelope. "These are legal documents," I said calmly. "You need to read them." His hands trembled as he took the papers. His eyes moved quickly across the page. I watched the colour drain from his face. "What is this?" he asked. "What did you do?" "I did nothing," I replied. "I told the truth." He looked past me toward the house. "Does she know?" I raised my voice just enough. "She knows now." Claudia appeared behind him, confusion on her face. "Know what?" He didn't answer. "I'm his wife," I said. "His legal wife. We were married for over 40 years. The man you know as Daniel doesn't exist." The silence that followed was unbearable. Claudia stared at him. "Is this true?" He closed his eyes. She stepped back as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "You said you were widowed," she whispered. "You said you had no one." "I had someone," I said. "Me." He fell to his knees on the concrete. "Eleanor, please, I can explain." "No," I said. "You've explained enough. You chose deception. You chose theft. You chose to erase me." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. "They're coming," he said hoarsely. "Yes." I turned to leave. "Eleanor," he called after me. For the years we shared, for what we were. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. What we were was real to me, I said. That's why you'll never understand what you destroyed. I walked away as the sound of approaching sirens grew louder. I didn't look back when the police pulled up. I didn't watch them lead him away. Daylight had finally reached the truth, and nothing built on lies survives the light. Thomas died 3 weeks later, not in the dramatic way people imagine, not in a courtroom or in handcuffs. He suffered a heart attack in the holding facility while awaiting formal charges. The call came early in the morning, calm and procedural, as though informing me of a missed appointment. He passed at 5:20 a.m., the voice said. You're listed as next of kin. For a long moment, I said nothing. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel sorrow. What I felt was distance, as though the man they were describing no longer belonged to my life in any meaningful way. Cremate him, I said finally. Scatter the ashes at sea. No service. There was a pause. Are you certain? Yes. He'd already taken enough from me. He wasn't taking one more performance. The legal process moved forward without him. The invalid identity was erased. The accounts were returned to their rightful status. The assets that had been hidden, sold, or transferred under false authority were recovered and redistributed by the court. What was stolen came back to where it belonged. Lucas accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to prison time for financial fraud and forgery. Not a lifetime, but long enough to understand the cost of his choices. We spoke once after the sentencing. It wasn't forgiveness. It was clarity. I love you, I told him. But love doesn't erase consequences. He nodded. For the first time, he didn't argue. Months passed. The house felt different, lighter. I redecorated, not to erase memories, but to claim space. I returned to the hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. I travelled with friends. I laughed without guilt. I slept through the night. Grief hadn't destroyed me. Silence had, and truth had saved me. One afternoon, I visited the cemetery where a stranger lay beneath my husband's name. I stood there briefly, not to mourn, but to close the door on the woman I used to be. That grave didn't hold my husband. It held my innocence. I left without looking back. Today, my life is quieter, smaller in some ways, stronger in all the ways that matter. I no longer confuse loyalty with self-erasure. I no longer believe love requires silence. I learned that dignity is not granted by marriage or blood. It's claimed the moment you refuse to be lied to any longer. And I learned that even after betrayal, even after years of deception, it's never too late to choose yourself. That choice changes everything.